Peace, brother.
How are you?
Good, Brian. How are you?
Great. Good to see you again.
Likewise, man. Likewise.
Yes.
So, out of respect for your time, I'd like to just jump right in if we could.
Sure. Did you get the email I sent you earlier today, about an hour ago?
Sure.
I didn't know if you needed some sort of bio for your intro or if you already had one prepared.
No, I don't have a bio prepared, but maybe at the end of the session, I'll just go and I'll use it.
Okay.
Because I don't have a bio, how about you just tell the listeners here on the Prison to Promise podcast who you are and where you're from and a little bit about that.
Okay. Are we starting now? Are we good to
Yeah.
go? Okay. My name is Brian Scott. I'm the executive director of OurJourney, a nonprofit organization here in North Carolina that is working to assist men and eventually women as they return to our communities from prison. Good to be with you.
Thanks, man. Definitely. It's a pleasure to have you with me. And what has made you start this organization versus, say, a bagel shop or, a bicycle repair shop or something? Why
Right.
this?
Yeah, so I'm formerly incarcerated myself. I don't know a lot about bagels or bicycles, but I do know a lot about being incarcerated. I was incarcerated for 20 years and was released last February. And so I know a lot about reentry as well, from learned experience and just traveling that path and learning the hard way at times
Mhm.
about what it means to return to society and rebuild a life after incarceration.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, man. And if I'm not pushing too hard, and please let me know if I am, but what led you to prison? What was some of the basic things that led you to prison and ended up doing 20 years?
That's a good question. And, I think that if you look at it, doesn't matter what the crime is. I think if you look at it at the root level, all crime, at least 95% of it is the root is the same. It's
Mm,
basically seeing people as a means to an end, whether
mm,
you're taking their life, whether
mm,
you're taking their possessions, whether you're taking their body for
mm,
sex.
mm,
It all comes down to that. And that was my problem.
mm,
I saw everybody through the lens of instrumental value.
mm,
In other words, what can you do for me?
mm,
What can you do for me to bring me happiness, to bring me joy, to bring me fulfillment?
mm.
As opposed to seeing them with intrinsic value, which means you're valuable just because of who you are,
Yeah,
just because of the image of God that's stamped upon your soul. And that was something that you're supposed to mature out of that. Everybody has that as a child and even as a teenager, but eventually you're supposed to mature out of it. Unfortunately, I didn't, and I went to prison and had to mature out of it in prison. So my crime was actually a sex offense,
mm,
and that's I regret that with all of my heart. And I look back at that person and
sure.
see and don't even recognize him anymore. But that's what led me to prison. That's what put me on this journey of really having to look at myself through a hard lens, and examining myself. And
Yeah,
that is not a fun process. I'm telling you, Craig, that is hard work. And
absolutely.
when you look and you see who you were and who you are, and
Mm,
I did that during the 8.5 months I was in the county jail.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was a very sobering experience, and I knew that I didn't want to be that person. And at that point, and even all the way up through my entire 20 years of incarceration, I never knew that I would be out one day in a position to give back
yeah.
the way I'm doing it and the way OurJourney is doing it. But I certainly knew that the person I was had to change for the sake of those around me and for my own sake.
Yeah. Hey, man, first and foremost, I want to thank you for sharing that piece about yourself. I think it takes a lot of courage to share what your offense is, no matter what your offense is, because a crime is a crime is a crime. And, once we commit any type of crime, we're oftentimes labeled and ostracized. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Couple things you dropped, though, man, is really heavy. And one of them was, maturing out of this stage of selfishness or however we can define it. And I think that most of us, we do mature out, but sometimes we have to go through some hard times, something to press it out of us, or else we stay stuck in whatever that reality is where we're taking advantage of others and abusing ourselves, you know.
Absolutely.
And it slips me what else you said because you had dropped some heavy jewels, but that one piece, man, I wanted to just elevate. But as I'm talking, I'd like to know, like, at what point during your sentence did you really begin to work on redefining yourself?
Like I said, the process started in the county jail.
Yeah.
It was a very difficult time for me, of course. It was a difficult time for my family. And I think it started with rebuilding those relationships or beginning to rebuild those relationships with a family that stood by me despite their hurt and their pain. And I think that gave me the confidence to work on myself a little bit more because I did have their support. I did have their unconditional love. So it began in the county jail, but it continued for several years and really, throughout my incarceration, where you take a look at yourself, you have a lot of time for introspection. You have a lot of time if you're willing to do that because it is hard work. It was something that my family helped me with, of course. Reading material helped me with just the whole process of expanding your mind, expanding your experiences, and doing the hard work. Some of it was through education. I did take some classes through the outreach to inmates program from Chapel Hill, and so it was just seeing that that the world doesn't revolve around you, which is the mindset of somebody who only sees people through the lens of instrumental value.
Yeah.
And that never has ended. I mean, in fact, it continues today. And it's so easy for us to get caught up out here. We're doing good, we're helping people, but we have to be careful because we can fall into that too.
It's the way of our world.
I know, where we're so busy networking and building these contacts that we look through to the mindset of what can this person do for me? What can this organization do for me? And of course, some of that is understandable, but it needs to go beyond that. And one of the things that I tell people all the time, it's not about if you're only networking for yourself and you're not trying to build relationships, then you're going to fail. And so it's important for me to do that even today to continue that process.
You keep saying this magic word, man, relationships.
Right.
Relationships. And I say it's magic because people oftentimes, at least in our culture, believe that they can do stuff on their own. They could be successful on their own.
Right.
But we have to have relationships that can help sustain us, to help elevate us, to help us become better.
Absolutely.
Before I got on this call with you, I was listening to a audible book with my 10-year-old son about mental toughness for young athletes, and one of the things that encourage young athletes to do is to surround themselves with people who are trying to do better, who want to do better, not people who are stuck in the status quo.
Right.
That rings true for all of us. And as you also talked about that relationship, you mentioned the support of your family, and I think, again, when people are recovering, be it from criminal background, drugs and alcohol, or a heart attack, whatever it is, they have to have sustainable, viable, strong supports, or else they don't make it. And then lastly, just as human beings, we're meant to be with other people.
Yes.
So we have to have relationships.
Yes.
We should have good relationships. So just listening to you talk is just like reaffirming, because I don't know if you know about my experience, but I spent 8 years in prison in New York State. And the things that you talk about, relationships, introspection, I call it getting butt naked in front of myself, and really looking at and didn't like what I see. All these things that you're talking about is the same as my journey to help me get back.
Yes. And to your point about relationships, I mentioned the support of my family, but equally important, both during and after my incarceration, was the support of the true friends that I met during my incarceration. And I don't think that gets talked about enough. And maybe that's because that experience isn't a reality for everybody. But for me, I was able to meet some of the most wonderful friends in prison. It's, I tell people, you're not going to meet a lot of people in prison that you want to befriend, but the ones that you do meet are going to be there for life. And so, the Bible says iron sharpens iron. And that was certainly true during my incarceration. When I got out, these men that had gotten out before me rallied to me. They were there for encouragement. And, it's one thing to have the support of family and friends. And that means a lot in so many practical ways. But to actually have people who know what it's like, they've been through it, they've experienced the highs and lows of returning from prison, to have them there and say, man, you can lean on me. I'm here for you. Some of them even financially supported me, bought me some clothes, bought me my first TV. But even more importantly than that, just that bond, okay, these guys know what it's like. It's just as fresh to them as it is to me. And it was just a wonderful experience having that support.
Yeah, and family don't necessarily know what that's like transitioning from prison back to the free world. They may be there to help support you the best way they can, but I don't think they understand the psychological things that go on for us, So
Absolutely.
that's awesome. And I think also, as you talk about wonderful people in prison, I'll tell you, in my experience, I met not only some of the most wonderful people that I've ever met while I was in prison, but also I've met some of the most brilliant people in my life, in my entire life, behind
That is so true.
But a lot of
That is
times,
so true.
many people back there, they just don't get opportunities, man.
That's right. I've still got some friends in there that, were serving natural life sentences. And I'm gonna tell you, brother, and you know this as well, that's very difficult, you care so much about them and you see so much potential in them, and you know that they have to pay for what they did, but at the same time, you know that it's such a waste to have all of that knowledge and all that wisdom and all that compassion bottled up inside a prison.
People change.
They do.
People change. All of us, we're changing. Every decade, we're different. Probably every day.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
But man, you did 20, you said 20 years or 24 years?
20 years.
So you had 20 years on your chest. What encouraged you to work on yourself?
The main thing was just not liking what I saw. When you examine yourself, especially initially during those 8.5 months in the county jail, and you see, like you said, just butt naked, and the sorrow that you caused and your family and those who love you, and the sorrow that you caused yourself. It was very much a spiritual journey for me as well.
Yeah.
Just getting to know myself from the perspective of God Almighty, and how He saw me.
Yeah.
And and I've talked to people. I've got some great Muslim friends that I met during my incarceration, and their journey was very similar. It was spiritual for them. Yeah. And so that was a big part of it. Just seeing that, and also knowing that despite everything that I had done and been through during my life, deep inside there was a heart that wanted to help, and it wanted to be a part of something positive. And you always justify everything in the moment.
Absolutely.
When you get away from that moment and you look back and you put aside all those excuses and justifications, you see that there's a challenge in front of you now. Can you face that challenge? And I remember in the county jail, it was one of the first nights there, because you have all of this stuff that your life has been revolving around for so long, and then all of a sudden it just crashes and it's a mess all around you. And there's the point where that's overwhelming to you because you've lost so much. But there's also the point where there's a ray of hope, because you say, you know what, I don't have to continue that way anymore.
That's right.
I can start fresh.
That's right.
Do I have the courage to start fresh?
That's right. Do I have the courage?
Right. And so there came a moment when I said, you know what, for the first time in my life, I'm going to man up. I'm going to do the hard work. I'm going to face this stuff head on. I know it's going to be difficult. I didn't realize how difficult it would be, but I know it's going to be difficult. But for the first time in my life, I don't have any excuses.
Yeah.
My lies are gone. They're not propping me up anymore. Yeah. Everything's exposed. So, okay, let's start fresh.
So what you going to do?
Exactly.
Yeah. One of the things that I also think about that I failed to mention earlier in our conversation is I think that many of us, probably a large percentage of those of us who find ourselves in prison, also have a traumatic history. We have some form of trauma in our background, that might have sent us off on a different trajectory than we started on. So that was just one thing I wanted to highlight as well. I think many of us,
absolutely,
we have to learn to work on that trauma and confront that trauma, and that's part of that courage, and that's also part of the education and knowledge. When we get that education and knowledge, I think we become more courageous.
Right.
We can face whatever it is that we have to face to straighten ourselves up, sort of like this pencil I'm holding.
That's the key. How do you use how do you use your past not as an excuse or
Mhm.
not as a justification, but
Yeah.
as a motivation to overcome? And
Yeah.
I think that's the important key, because for me, my trauma in my past became a way for me to say, well, I have an excuse.
Yeah.
But you don't, because there are hundreds and thousands of people who have been through traumas just as bad as anything that you and I have experienced,
Mhm.
did not go down that path.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
tells you it doesn't have to happen that way.
Yeah.
And so the courage to overcome that past and that trauma is so important.
Absolutely. And so I wanted to just mention this pencil again, because I can parallel my life, your life, any of our lives to this pencil. You know, what needs to happen for this pencil to work is that it has to be sharpened.
Right.
Okay. And after working it, using it for a while, it gets dull. So we have to sharpen it again. Sharpening a pencil is a matter of cutting. And so as a person, we
Yes.
have to get sharpened sometimes. We have to
That's
get
right.
chiseled. And sometimes it hurts. It's
Amen.
uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying?
That's
But
right.
the pencil is used to write down what we want. Our life, we leave a mark wherever we go. But the thing about the pencil is that it can erase some of our
That's right.
mistakes. There still may be a smudge there and you can see what was erased, but then you can write something new over it.
That's
You know?
right.
And
I
so
might
that,
use that. That's
yeah.
a great illustration. I'll probably even give you credit for it.
Hey, don't give me credit for it, because I heard it somewhere else through the grapevine somewhere. And it
But that
just,
is wonderful. So true.
yeah. And so just like I want to be like the pencil, because
Right.
I'm not perfect. And the pencil knows it's not perfect. That's why it has an eraser.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
And
That's good stuff.
yeah, we gotta be courageous enough to use it, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said, you got to sharpen that thing. And it's not easy, because you're going to shed some stuff. You're going to shed some of that old skin. You're going to
Yeah.
shed some of that, stuff that needs to go away before you to sharpen yourself. So, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So you've been out for how long now?
It'll be 2 years this coming February. So about 22 months now.
So like a brand new baby almost.
I'm telling you, man, it seems in some ways it seems like I've been out for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then in some ways it seems like, it's just yesterday. I had a recurring dream the other night that I was supposed to be getting out and they wouldn't let me out, even though it was my release date.
Yeah.
And I would wake up and go back to sleep and pick up right in the same spot in that dream.
Yeah.
So it's very much still part of my psyche, and it will be for forever.
Probably
But at the same time, a lot of stuff has happened, a lot of really good stuff that makes it seem like it was, a lifetime ago.
Awesome, man. Yo, I've been out over 20 years and I still have those dreams. You know? So
Yeah.
just stick with you, man, but just keep
Yeah.
pushing, keep pushing.
Right.
And so, like, what are you doing nowadays, man? Talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. It's been such a busy season for me. Our journey is not even a year old, but we have had the opportunity to make some really good contacts, partnerships with the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, with
Mhm.
reentry specialists around this great state,
Mhm.
with private nonprofit organizations that are doing some great things in this space.
Mhm.
And so we have seen tremendous growth
Mhm.
and hope to see that continue, because what we are doing is, we launched officially on February 26th of this year.
Mhm.
So about 10 months ago. And on July 1st, we launched our first initiative, which is our first aid reentry kit program.
Mm.
And what we're trying to do with the first aid reentry kit program is to provide a basic set of resources for every man and woman getting out of, there's 17,000 plus men and women every year that are returning to our communities from our state prisons, just our state prisons. And
Not
we
even
want to
mentioning federal.
not even mention the federal, not to mention your detention centers across the state.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to meet the needs of those 17,000 people, especially during those first 30 to 90 days,
Mhm.
which are so critical, because the recidivism rate is very high for that period of time. And then after
Absolutely.
that, it starts to go down until you get to 3 years, and it plummets to nearly nothing.
Yeah,
So
take it off.
exactly. So that's what we're really focused on. And the first aid reentry kit program is a way for us to do that. We partner with the individual correctional facilities. We've just started a partnership. In fact, we're announcing it tomorrow on our social media, with the Buncombe County Local Reentry Council.
Mhm.
We provide our reentry kits to every man who is returning to Buncombe County, regardless of their correctional facility, state correctional facility. And this kit has some practical things like a $25 gift card to a restaurant, a t-shirt. But the main component of it that we believe will be the most helpful is a reentry resource guide for their specific county, regardless of which one of the 100 counties that they're returning to. We want to give them some contact information for agencies, nonprofits, faith-based organizations, even some businesses that are in that county that they can turn to for assistance in any number of ways. One of the tragedies of my reentry was that I was returned to Guilford County, which is a resource-rich county. There's just a lot going on in Guilford County. They are one of 19 counties in the state with a DPS-sponsored local reentry council that focuses on these issues specifically every single day. Yet I was returned to Guilford County and nobody told me about any of the resources that were available there. Not my case manager at the prison that I was released from, not my parole officer when I, saw her for the first time. And we just think that's a shame. And that's one of the things that we want to, that's just a basic thing. You should at least know what's available in your county for assistance.
Often, if people know better, they can do better.
Exactly.
If they don't know what's there for them, they won't access it.
Exactly. And some of our counties are small and rural, and there's not a lot going on, but every county has something. Every county has at least an NC Works, which, by the way, NC Works is a state agency that is just knocking it out of the park. Everywhere we go, every county we talk to, we hear great things about what they're doing. And of course, their main focus is job training and job placement. But on top of that, in some of these smaller counties, they are the reentry experts because there aren't these other larger organizations. So they end up seeing a lot of these clients and just have developed this cause on their own to help them find reentry specialists in their county. So at least at a very minimum, get them connected with some of these people that are doing the hard work, even if it's a rural county that doesn't have a lot going on. And again, that should have just been basic, but unfortunately it doesn't happen a lot. And if you don't know who you can reach out to, then you're not going to reach out. And so your chances of returning go up. So that's one of the components of the kit as well. And then, it's important that this reentry resource guide be up to date and accurate, because somebody getting out of prison and you start calling numbers on a piece of paper somebody's given you, and they're out of order, websites don't work anymore. You're going to get discouraged. And the last thing that you need is more discouragement.
Absolutely. And, that was part of my challenge when I got out of prison back in 1997. Somebody gave me a resource sheet, and most of the numbers I called were either out of order or the agency defunct or they moved or something. And back in 1997, when I came home, the internet was still new. So it's still, we couldn't access the resources we do today.
Right.
Now today, people can get online and access any number of resources.
Right. And so we want to direct them to that.
All right.
That information. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. And, just thinking about the internet, I'm thinking a lot of people have not had access to the internet. I'm thinking yourself as well, being away for 20 years, and then somebody gives you a computer, gives you a smartphone, and you're like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, you're scared. We had a guy that got out a couple of weeks ago and receiving one of our kids, had the opportunity to talk to him on the phone. And so somebody did provide him with a basic cell phone. And I was trying to walk him through something very basic, very simple. And it was just overwhelming to him, and I told him just to tap on something. And his natural instinct was to push and hold his finger down instead of just tapping. Right. And of course, your phone thinks you're trying to copy and paste when you do that. So that little window popped up. And it's overwhelming. It's one of the reasons why one of the other components of the kit is a printed North Carolina DMV driver handbook. And we've had people say, you can access that free online. Yes, you can. But again, to your point, some guys getting out of prison are scared to death of using the internet and technology. Exactly. So, which is another reason why, eventually we want to put our reentry resource guides on our website for anybody to access, but we will always include a hard copy of it for the very reasons that we just mentioned.
I'm thinking, there's probably a place with what you're doing or what other agencies are doing, there's some place where they can begin to build in a technology course, a basic technology usage course on how to
Right.
use a smartphone, how to surf the web for information,
Right.
I think there's
Definitely. And I listened to one of your podcasts when you had Sharif Brown on, and you guys were talking about the need and the importance for pre-release
yeah,
reentry assistance.
yeah,
You don't wait until you're out. And I
right,
think that's kind of the mindset for a lot of people is we'll do it, when they get out, we'll help them when they get out.
Mhm.
But exactly what you're saying, it needs to start earlier. There's
Mhm.
so many things that can be done. If you don't want to start too early because DPS doesn't want to invest the resources into someone who's got a long sentence, at least when you get within a year, 9 months of your release date, there ought to be things that they're preparing you for. And I think that nonprofit organizations can step up and can be a part of that in working with the Department of Public Safety. Because one thing we found, and I'm going to tell you, it was kind of a surprise to me. When you're locked up, you hear all kinds of bad things about the Department of Public Safety, and they want you to be locked up, and it's job security. And I think that there are certainly people within DPS that have that mentality and approach. But one of the things that we have been excited about is to find people like Nicole Sullivan, Sarah Cobb, these people that are working in DPS, and every day they focus on reentry and reducing the recidivism rate. And so to be able to talk to them, and I think that organizations, that it's the pendulum has swung. We've now reached a sort of a golden period for reentry. And I think every stakeholder from the private to the public sector is realizing that, listen, this is not just helping a guy not go back to prison. This is helping our communities.
Yes,
helping the bottom line of our tax dollars.
absolutely.
So whether you're on the left or the right, everybody is seeing this now. And I think we need to take advantage of the moment.
Yeah. And I think it's so important that prisons stop punishing people and start transitioning into some form of true rehabilitation or habilitation or training, so that when people come out of prison, most people will come out in better shape than they went in, instead of coming out in worse shape than when they went in.
Yes. And don't we see that happen?
Uh-huh.
And it's just a shame. It's almost like, I remember I had this situation, and it involved my educational pursuits, where it seemed like the system was working against me. Here I am trying to better myself, taking advantage of a program that you offer.
Yeah.
And I'm coming into so much resistance.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, to my unit manager, look, if you're not going to help me, then just stay the hell out of my way. I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
But again, to your point, you wish that it was more of a cooperative spirit. And I think that in some situations, it depends on the institution. But I think in some situations, there are some facilities that are much more progressive in their outlook than others. And you wonder what it's going to take to get everybody on board.
Right. And I think the overriding attitude is punish them, they don't deserve anything. But to your point, it saves the entire community. It can help make prisons safer, it can help make communities safer, and we save tax dollars.
Yes.
We help improve community health outcomes, community crime levels. It all boils down to helping our communities become better.
And the prison system is like any other employer. They're having a hard time finding people.
Yeah.
And they're 40%, 50%, 60% understaffed. In fact, they've had to close some institutions in the last year because of lack of people. Okay, well, here's the deal. If we can get the recidivism rate down, you don't need to hire those people.
Right. You don't need all these prisons.
Exactly.
And then what's happening, because they don't have as much staff to work in these places, they're keeping people on lockdown, and basically it's the equivalent to solitary confinement.
Yes. I talked to guys across the state that are going through that, and of course, COVID made that even worse.
Yeah.
And you see it now continue where guys are, they don't have access to a rec yard. If they have cells, a lot of times they're stuck inside their cells for multiple, consecutive hours every day. And they just don't have the staff. In fact, some of the prisons don't have the staff to let people, volunteers in for reentry type assistance. And so it's just, let's work on reducing the number of men that are incarcerated,
and
and you
women.
don't need all that staff.
Yeah, and women, because women are
women.
the fastest growing group
Yes,
in the carceral system.
that's
You know,
correct.
we're coming down to the end of our time together. But one of the things I wanted to double back on was the organization you have, OurJourney. Did you have an idea to start this while you were incarcerated, or was this something that was introduced to you, or how did you come upon this?
It never occurred to me during my incarceration that I'd be doing this one day. I always knew that I wanted to give back in some way, but to me, that meant continuing to be there for the men that I left behind who were still incarcerated. What happened was I got out of prison. That support system that I mentioned to you of close friends that I had met, they were there for me. We began having what we call reunions. And it just occurred to us at some point, this is great. The food, the fun, the fellowship.
Yeah.
We need to give back. We need to make it better and easier for those who come behind us.
Yeah.
So that was really the idea behind OurJourney, was to, make sure that people understood we're all in this together. The very name alludes to that. We're all in this together, and we want to be there for you when you're released. We understand what it's like. We know the challenges that you're going to face. And so it was very important for us to put this together in such a way that it was inclusive. One of the other components that I haven't mentioned to the kit is a reentry booklet called What to Expect Your First Days Free. And to write that book and to compile that book, we held numerous Zoom meetings with over close to 36 formerly incarcerated men who had successfully returned to society. And we listened to their experiences because everybody's experience is different.
Right.
And so we wanted to accumulate a cross-reference of experiences that we could compile into a book to give encouragement, some basic strategy tips. One of the things that I'm proudest about of that book and of our organization is we had these men who participated in this. Many of them said, how can we be a part of what you're doing?
Yeah.
So we said, well, do you really want to? We're going to find out if you're really serious, because we asked them for their first name and their phone number that we include in the back of this booklet. And it's there for anybody to call when you get stuck, when you get overwhelmed, when you get depressed, when you need some basic advice. It's not for legal advice. It's not for financial assistance, but when you just get stuck in the moment,
Makes me think about the NAAA rooms.
Correct.
Give me a number so I could call somebody.
Correct. So it's our journey. It's the journey of those who have experienced this, helping those who come behind.
Dope, man. That's dope. And it's a beautiful story, man. One of the last things I want to ask you, well, two of the last things I want to ask you, and one is, what would be some insights or advice that you would share with someone coming right behind you, and they came right to your door, and they're like, yo, man, give me some wisdom. What would that be?
The basic wisdom that I tell people is put one foot in front of the other. Don't get too far out in front of yourself. Don't think that you're going to rebuild your life overnight. Don't think that you're going to reconnect with your children and it's going to be just like it was before you're released. Don't think that you're going to walk into a job that's going to be your final forever job. Put one foot in front of the other. Do the hard stuff. Don't try to get ahead of yourself. And if you do that, if you do things the right way, then you will look back a year, 18 months, 2 years now, and you will be surprised how far you travel. When I got out of prison, my credit score was 0. I didn't even have a credit score because it had been so long. The last time I checked, it was 748. And all that is just doing things the right way. It's not that complicated. But what happens is we get out of prison and we want to rebuild everything fast. We want to have what we lost. We want to regain everything so fast. And so my advice to those that are getting out is don't rush the process. Walk through it. It's going to be slow. It's going to be aggravating. It's going to be depressing at times. You're going to get overwhelmed, but walk through the process. Look, man, we did time in prison. Is there anything that could possibly be harder than that?
I'm trying to tell you, right?
And how did we do it? By just doing what I just said, taking it day by day, not getting too far in front of ourselves. And the same thing works when we get out.
Yeah. A guy told me when I was going in and he was getting out after 10 years, I said, I know you're going to try and catch up on all the things you left behind. He said, "No, baby, bro." He said, "If I try to catch up, I'm gonna get caught up."
That's exactly right.
And so, but also listening to you saying, put one foot in front of the other. My brother told me that in a phone call when I was locked up back in the 90s. He said, just put one foot in front of the other, baby, bro. And then just to capital or just to add on to that, I heard a conversation about the Mamba, Kobe Bryant.
Yes.
And one of the things that Kobe Bryant did, they said, is he would just practice the basics, mastering the basics. And
That's
he
right.
would do basics over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Mastering the basics, consistency. And then another story about Kobe is that his teammates were coming from a club late one night, like 3 a.m, and they run into him in the hotel elevator. He's got his gym bag, and they're like, "Where you going?" He's like, "I'm going to the gym." "Where y'all going?" "We're going to bed," because they've been in the club. Just to speak to the greatness when people master the basics and they put one foot in front of the other and they keep working consistently with a vision of where they're going and what they want to be.
That's right. It's so important. And then the other thing would be just surround yourself with positive people. Don't get caught up in the drama around you. Listen to Prison to Promise podcast and other things like that will encourage you and motivate you, and challenge you as well. So that's a key part too.
Dope, man. I hope your book gets inside the prisons. The basic book of the things you need to do. That would be awesome.
Yes.
And so finally, and in closing, if you could entitle your journey from the time you went to prison to right now, if you entitled that or made a catchphrase out of that, what would that say?
Wow, that's a great question. I think that it would be just the title would be one word, and that is rediscovery.
Oh, wow.
You have to, the thing about it is once you peel back the bad stuff that we talked about earlier, and you go through that process of introspection, you're also going to see the potential and the good. And I learned so much about the possibilities that I had as a human being. So there was a process of discovering the bad and facing it, but rediscovering your true self and finding that potential that each of us has. And it doesn't matter if you're black or white, Christian or Jew, old or young, educated or uneducated. We all have that spark of divinity within us. And the process is bringing that out so that you can share it with others and build these relationships like you talked about, and be a force for change in your world and in your community.
Right on, man. Right on. And with that, man, I'm going to call it a wrap and say thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for sharing your experience.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. It's been a joy to be on with you today.
Right on. And so just before you get off, man, if you would, send me that bio.
Okay.
Maybe send me a headshot.
Okay.
In about 2 weeks, this episode will be released.
Okay.
Post your bio, your headshot. I'll make a flyer and I'll send it out, and I'll send it to you to share with your network as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's no problem. And I'll also, will you include some information about our website and all that stuff in your?
Whatever you send me, I can.
Okay. Okay. Sounds great, man.
All right. But tell me, how can people reach you? Because that was the last thing I meant to ask you, because I could edit that in. We got 1 minute.
Okay. The best way to reach me is through my email address, and that is Brian, BRIAN .Scott at OurJourneyTogether.com. And the way you spell that last part is Our Journey, and then the number 2, and then the word GETHER.com.
Right on. I'll make sure that gets put into the podcast.
Okay, great.
All right, my friend. Yo, be in touch.
Hey, thank you so much, man. We need to get together. Look, man, there's a whole network of us across the state that have been incarcerated, that are in the process of getting back. Huh?
This is about to shut off. But email me and let's talk more so we can get together.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend.
Take your time, brother.
Take care.
Peace.